Leanne, thank you. Get back to Washington here. The financial regulatory overhaul bill facing hurdles in the Senate after the House passed it last night. With us, members of the House Financial Services Committee, Illinois Democrat Melissa Bean, New Jersey Republican Scott Garrett. Scott, I need to start with you just because I see that you don't really like the name that the legislation has right now, and you're proposing Empowering Failed Bureaucrats Through Government Overreach and Unnecessary Job-Killing Act of 2010. Is that pretty much, that's kind of your thoughts on this, right?
That's basically my thoughts. Or
Tell us what you really think. Try not to sugarcoat it. Is it really that bad?
It is really that bad. And if you want to shorten it down, you consider this is the Frank Dodd bill. And you just shorten that even further. This is the fraud bill, because this is a fraud on the American public that we're actually
Frank and Dodd.
Fraud.
Wow, that's good. What? John Taylor has a piece in the Journal today. What are your main bones of contention?
Yeah, that piece is a great piece. You know, on the way over here today, I was reading in the local paper that unemployment here in the nation's capital is one of the lowest levels in the entire country. Well, this bill will just help ensure that for generations to come, because we are just going to be hiring so many more bureaucrats to go after problems that were not the cause of the problem. We're going to be going after corporate governance. We're going to be going after the hedge funds. We're going to be going after little investors and non-investors, people using their ATMs. Meanwhile, we're forgetting about what the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, one of the biggest problems out there, root causes of this, costing taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. We miss all of that. We perpetuate the bailout mentality, and going into the future, we codify that. We go in the wrong direction. We cause mere bureaucracy. We cause more burdens to the taxpayers. We cause more moral hazard. And this is the solution, the best that they could do.
Representative Bean, where do you want to start? What do you think? You disagree with most of that?
Pretty much. I think, and so does the American public. The American public has been asking for these reforms for quite some time, and it's time we've delivered. We were working on the mortgage reform parts of the bill, so we don't put people in homes they can't afford, that lenders keep a portion of their loans on their books so they care that they can pay for those loans. We've brought oversight for derivatives, where we had AIG problems with no regulation of a multi-trillion-dollar derivatives market. That will be in place. Capital requirements will be in place. We brought consumer protections so that whether it's credit cards, disclosure on loans, any kind of financial products, we can make sure that abusive practices and products don't get to market, so consumers and investors are protected. And most important, whether you call it dissolution or liquidation authority, no bailouts. If firms get into excessively risky scenarios and they fail, they're fired, and they should be. Shareholders will lose money, and any costs of liquidating their assets will be handled not by taxpayers, but by the industry.
What do you think, Scott? Some of that, there must be something in there that passes muster with you, Scott, no?
Well, yeah. Well, actually, one provision that I got added to the bill was dealing with Sarbanes-Oxley, which is something they were not talking about at all, to try to give some relief to the small cap companies. But come on, Melissa, were people actually calling your office prior to this saying, you got to do something with the CFTC and the SEC and creating a dual track area there with the derivatives? No.
Yeah, absolutely, they have been. And what they've been calling about is they've been saying, where is your action for 2 years? They've been very frustrated. They've seen the value of their homes, their investments, their house, their businesses, all depleted after the worst financial crisis in our lifetime. They have been demanding answers and action. And Scott, and you know that as well. Because you have constituents who've experienced those same losses.
We do. And the first 2 points that you raised here are things that we need to address were areas on credit cards and mortgages. And as you know, of course, that was 2 areas that have already been addressed by Congress. I disagree with how it was done with regard to credit card regulation. That was already done. Mortgage applications and requirements, separate legislation authority was passed to the Fed on that. That was already done. So if you thought that those were the problems, that was already done previous to this legislation. But the areas in this bill, as far as the wind-down authority, trying to deal with ending the bailouts. And yes, Melissa, that is something we got a lot of calls from people saying we don't want any more bailouts.
And this bill does that, and
you
you know the bill does that.
The bill, no one thinks that this bill ends bailouts.
It absolutely does. It's laughable to suggest that it doesn't. In the past, those companies were kept alive. They kept executives. That's not the case, and it won't be moving forward. And the people need to have that trust and confidence that it won't be allowed in the future, and it won't.
Well, the creditors, as you well know in the bill, this simply says that the creditors will be, just like with AIG, bailed out at 100 cents on the dollar. So if your constituents were happy with the way that the government basically used their taxpayer dollars to bail out AIG's creditors at 100 cents on the dollars, whether it was Chinese, whether it was China.
That's exactly why it won't be done that way. AIG will have a regulator who can look through, and a systemic risk regulator, through the holding company down to the subsidiary level to look at those risky practices and transactions that they were involved with absolutely no reserves. Those capital requirements will be in place. They won't be able to do those transactions without backing them up and leaving taxpayers on the hook. That will be disallowed, and the American public can have confidence that that won't happen again.
Well, they already, AIG, as you well know, already had a regulator, and that regulator failed. So we're basically saying that, look, the regulators who did a lousy job previously, whether it's over the SEC or the OCC or the Federal Reserve, we're going to give them even more power and more authority. And that was a piece that you're saying in the Wall Street Journal today. It was just right on the mark, saying that regulators are empowered even more, even though they had the authority, whether it was the New York Fed, whether it was the Fed, whether it was the SEC. All the regulators who failed in the past, they're giving even more and extensive authority, and the bailout doesn't
certainly, we want
Representative
SEC.
Garrett, I just want to ask you a question, Representative Garrett. What is the specific language? You said that it says specifically that creditors will be bailed out 100% on the dollar. What is the language you're talking about there? Well, that wasn't my read of what I'd seen in the legislation.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, what happens here, and Barney, if he was sitting next to me, would say, well, we're not going to allow these companies to continue. What we're going to do is to allow them to exist for up to 5 years, during which time, yes, the equity holders, they will be wiped out. But just as in the past circumstances, as in AIG, the creditors, they will effectively be bailed out. Who will they be bailed out?
Not unsecured creditors, though, Representative.
The secured creditors.
Not the unsecured. The unsecured would lose, and the equity would lose.
No, not necessarily, because that's exactly why. Otherwise, why would you need the FDIC as a resolution authority and then to have a tax on all the rest of the industry? Where does that money go to? If it's not going to the equity holders, where's that money going to? That money is going out to the creditors on there. Otherwise, you wouldn't need it. Otherwise, you could do exactly what we suggested from actually before day one, because the Republicans came up with a proposal to just go to a expedited bankruptcy, which is what the Wall Street Journal was suggesting.
All right. Okay, we have settled nothing. I feel like, but thank you for the discussion, Representatives Melissa Bean and Scott Garrett.